Daily and special tasks that require making kills using SPAAs are one of the easiest types of missions if using the correct vehicle. Because in War Thunder, most self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicles are struggling when fighting tanks, which is not surprising. It turns out anti-air vehicles are designed to fight air targets. The only exceptions where SPAAs feel good against ground targets are very low battle ratings, where we have plenty of light tanks that often can be penetrated even with machine guns, and very high battle ratings, where some SPAAs have missiles with crazy penetration. The problem is that not every player has top-tier vehicles unlocked, and low-tier ones do not meet the conditions for completing daily and special tasks. But as always, there are exceptions. As you might have guessed already, one such exception is Swedish L-62 Anti-2, which is rank 3 SPAA, so it can be used to complete all SPAA-specific tasks, and it has a very low battle rating where it still meets plenty of light vehicles that can be penetrated frontally even with its low caliber gun. This SPAA uses a 40mm cannon and has rounds that are somewhat similar to what the average tank uses at similar battle rating. The vehicle can use 3 types of rounds, but in order to use them you will have to choose from 3 types of belts that consists of various proportions of these rounds. You cannot use only one type of shell. The stock belt has an equal amount of high explosive and solid armor-piercing rounds, so only every second shot is effective against armored opponents. Nevertheless, even after researching other belts, I was always carrying the stock belt because it has the biggest percentage of the most penetrating shells available for this SPAA. Armor-piercing rounds penetrate up to 79mm. The stock belt is mostly useful when dealing with medium or heavy tanks, especially at longer ranges where other types of rounds could be ineffective. Another belt, my favorite, that I was also carrying at all times, consists of 75% of semi-armor-piercing high-explosive incendiary rounds. The name might sound complicated, but essentially it's an old good APHE, with fuse delay that allows the round to fly deeper inside the tank before detonating. In other words, one of the best type of rounds in the game because of how often they one-shot opponents. The only downside is that these rounds have slightly less penetration than solid AP rounds. Not by much, these shells penetrate only 11mm less, but sometimes that might be the difference between destroying an opponent or just attracting its attention. The last type of belt is the same as the stock one, just has more high explosive rounds. Technically it's the best belt to use against planes, but I wasn't using it for the sake of simplicity. I already had 2 different belts to switch between, and it felt like having to use more buttons would be beyond my skill level. Anyway, the main opponents I was fighting were ground units, while planes were just targets of opportunity. Sometimes there are no aircraft at all, and sometimes if I managed to sneak behind enemy lines, engaging planes would reveal my location to enemies. But one thing I can say for sure is that if you plan to occasionally attack planes, take the maximum amount of rounds into battle. This vehicle can carry only 144 projectiles, which is quite a small amount of rounds for an SPAA. When the sky was busy and I was focusing on planes, I had to stay near a captured point to be able to refill the ammunition. For a vehicle designed to fight planes, it's quite unprotected from above. I mean, literally zero protection. The crew does not even wear helmets. But the situation is not much better from all other angles. The thickest armor plates are only 13mm, which is not enough to defend even against high-caliber machine guns that many opponents, be it ground or air vehicles, will already have. So staying hidden and shooting first are the only ways to survive. Luckily, the rate of fire allows to fire multiple rounds into the enemy before they have a chance to respawn. And because the ammo is so thin, there is a good chance that opponents' APHE rounds won't detonate. Despite having no armor, the mobility is somewhat comparable to medium or even heavy tanks. The maximum speed is only 40 and reverse is 5 kph. Not the fastest vehicle. Cannon's elevation, as expected from SPAA, elevates a lot, up to 85 degrees, so the blind spot above the vehicle is almost non-existent, while gun depression is only 5 degrees, which is worse than average, but manageable. Unfortunately, the turret's rotation is quite slow for SPAA. With a screw and horizontal drive modification, it reaches 21 degrees per second. That's something you can expect from light or medium tank, but not from an anti-air vehicle that is supposed to keep up with nimble planes flying from side to side. Such turret rotation speed is not a very big issue, especially when engaging ground targets, but occasionally I was struggling against planes and had to turn the whole vehicle in order to keep the cannon on target. In arcade, battle rating noticeably increases, by 2 steps all the way to 3.7, which makes it significantly more difficult to fight ground vehicles as you will meet more armored opponents. Of course, the penetration indicator helps to find the weak spots, but still, penetration becomes an issue. Also, it's harder to flank because of name tags, so most of the time I was only able to attack opponents frontally, which made penetration issues even worse. The vehicle is still playable in arcade, but air targets will become the main source of kills, since many ground units will be impenetrable. I wouldn't use it as the main vehicle in this game mode. When using a vehicle like this, SPAA specific tasks become one of the fastest and easiest to complete, because the vehicle can effectively fight both ground and air units, and the more targets you can fight, the more kills you can get. Gameplay with it felt like I was playing a regular tank, just this SPAA has less armor and higher fire rate, so basically it sacrifices protection for firepower. I would rate L-62 Anti-2 8 overheated cannons out of 10. Even when not doing any missions, this is a good vehicle to have in the lineup just because of its performance.